Right now on Tech Radio, welcome to the oligarchy.
Hi, I'm Artemis. I am a computer-generated AI voice, and you're listening to Tech Radio.
Every week online and on air with RT Radio, we bring you the latest in tech from Ireland and across the world. This is episode 1052, looking at how the richest men in the world are taking over the planet and leaving. Musk and Trump are about to take office, so are Martin and Harris here in Ireland. And Jeff Bezos has literally gone into orbit. So much going on. Let's get into it.
From TechCentral.ie, this is Tech Radio with Dusty Rhodes and Niall Kitson.
I'm Dusty. Joining me as always, our editor-in-chief, Niall Kitson. Niall, it's all go. We've got Trump is going to be inaugurated this weekend. We've got the new programme for government, and we've finally got a government. How many months is it since the election?
It's a couple of months now.
It's November, wasn't it?
Let's look at the upside here.
Yeah.
We're getting one Harris into office somewhere.
Brilliant. The Irish government have announced their programme for government. There's a lot in it. I mean, there's 160 pages of plans, and I'm kind of thinking that's a lot. But then you think you've got the whole organisation of government behind it to split out the work. So hopefully they'll be able to do it. And lots of stuff that they want to change in tech as well. One that is grabbing the headlines is that they're going to tackle scam text messages on your mobile phone. Do you get many of them?
Not as many as used to pop up. And I know it was a regular on Joe Duffy for years.
Yeah.
It'd be people going, I clicked on a link and it brought me to a thing and I input my details and now all my life savings are gone. Very tragic stories. So it's always nice to hear government say, okay, look, we've recognized X is a problem. Not that X, but we recognize that a problem exists. And we're acting, we have a plan and we're going to execute it. So that's very heartening. Anything that protects the consumer, and anything that, prevents an awful lot of heartbreak on the part of normal people is to be applauded. That's why we elect these people to look after us. So, in favor of that. However, there's a couple of things in there that are kind of, you have to do that. Don't act like you're doing us any favors here. In particular, there is discussion of regulation of online platforms. You know a little bit more about this. I mean, when it comes to the 6 named platforms, of which I think there's Google, Facebook, X, YouTube, I think separately is named. They're
the gatekeepers here, essentially, you're talking about, yeah.
The 6 gatekeepers under the Digital Services Act. There is a little wrinkle in there at the moment about financial products. So you know a little bit more than me on this.
There's a lot of good ideas floating around. And the one with those major platforms, they're thinking of bringing in regulation in Ireland anyway, and they're hoping it'll be taken up in the EU as well, where those platforms can only show ads for financial products that are actually regulated by a national authority. So, when you hear all these ads on the radio and it says, blah, 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 as regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland, blah, 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 and all that kind of stuff, right? They want to apply that same rule to online platforms like Facebook and YouTube, et cetera, and so on. Great idea.
More importantly, platforms like Revolut.
But Revolut don't advertise. And Revolut is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland anyway.
Yes. It is now. It wasn't always. So I think that is really the sector they're looking at is challenger banks. And
I don't know.
You're coming along. You're doing things differently.
Not challenger banks that they're after. I think it's more fake banks and fake financial offers and stuff like that. So that's why they want it to be that the ads, at the moment, I could place an ad on Facebook saying, give me your pension money and I'll double it in 10 years. And if somebody's...
Yeah, I'll invest it in crypto. You'll be great.
If somebody's stupid enough to give it to me, their money is gone. I can place that ad. But if I am prevented from placing that ad because I'm not regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland, it makes sense. Very simple to do. The email thing I think is interesting. So they're thinking of putting like email type scam filters on your text messages at a level with Vodafone or whoever it is that you're with. Other things they're thinking of doing is looking at algorithms that push harmful content on social media. That's a biggie.
Now, that's meat and potatoes stuff. That's Digital Services Act. That's from the EU. They have to do it. If you want to regulate social media companies properly, if you want to regulate the platforms properly, you've got to hit them in the algorithms.
Right, two of the more
algorithms and their pockets. And the two are linked.
Controversial ones that they're looking at. They want to enforce age verification. They've talked about it. They said they're going to do it, and they're looking at ways in how they're actually going to enforce it. So if you and I want to look at, adult content online, we'd have to supply a credit card or some kind of an ID. Now, I don't think that works because, if I have a kid or a teenager or whatever, and they're 15 years of age, all they need to do is find my passport and upload that. All right. And then you say, then you'll do like they do with some of the financial apps. What you have to do is you have to show your passport and then you have to take a scan of your face. Now, if you're looking at adult content or, content that you want to keep private to yourself, do you really want to have to show your passport and then have your face scanned?
Yeah. Well, this is an argument that's being had in the States at the moment in front of the Supreme Court over access to pornography. This was an action initially brought against Pornhub in Texas. And the idea was that, look, young people have got to be protected by this stuff. We've got serious issues with young people and their ability or lack thereof to form meaningful and engaging relationships. And look, young people's brains literally can't process this stuff. It's too much for a developing brain to actually manage, and it's far too freely available. So Texas brought this case to the Supreme Court, who have been trying to get their head around what exactly is going on and what exactly they want to limit access to, because they're looking at comparisons with other services in the past. And the question was asked, okay, if you log on to, Pornhub, for example, what kind of content am I going to get there that isn't, strictly adult in nature? Because they looked at the example of Playboy magazine, which carried articles from very important intellectuals, important writers of fiction that, yes, there was the salacious stuff there, but it was balanced out by actually quite sophisticated content. I mean, for years, the argument was, yes, I have Playboy, but I only get it for the articles. And that was a thing.
Are you suggesting that Pornhub should carry videos with highbrow conversations in them instead of...
Well, Pornhub themselves have said that they carry a lot of educational content, particularly stuff looking at sexual health. And I don't mean that as a misnomer or anything like that. So they do claim to have some sort of public service role, but that's what the Supreme Court is struggling with. It's like, here was this old measure that we have of adult content, which was packaged a certain way, and now here we have this new interpretation or version of adult content that is being put forward to, or rather that is made very freely available. And what's the balance? How do we actually assess this stuff?
It's a really thorny issue, and I don't like the way that it's going, but I don't have any better ideas. So it'll be interesting to see. That's one of the contentious things that the new government is bringing in as part of the programme for government in Ireland. Another is they're going down the Australian route, and they want to make schools in Ireland smartphone-free zones.
Well, I mean, this isn't new. We've invested how many millions in pouches for smartphones?
9 million or something like that. That's a drop. It's a drop in the ocean when you're talking about the government.
You could almost buy a house you could almost afford a deposit on a house in Dublin on that.
So that's also in there. And then they also said that they want Ireland to be the most secure location in the EU for data storage, data management and services as well, which I think is interesting.
Okay, well, do you know how we manage that? Shut down all the data centers and preserve our national power grid.
Also going on.
Sorry, I'm very
Yeah,
sarcastic
I'm going to
today.
move right
Sorry.
away from this before Micheál Martin knocks on my door and says, "Who is that fella anyway? Get rid of him." Also making the news today, Blue Origin and our pal Jeff Bezos. They launched their New Glenn rocket, which is big. Because I took a look at this, they were going, "Oh, how big it is," and it's as big as SpaceX. Basically, because they want their New Glenn to be take on SpaceX and to be literally launching cargo is the best way I can describe it up into orbit. But this rocket is huge. You know, Liberty Hall in Dublin. Okay, you can picture that. Many of the people listening have seen it. Or if you're down the south of the country, you've been to Cork at all the County Hall in Cork, another one of the biggest buildings in Ireland. All right, Jeff Bezos' rocket is a third higher than both of those buildings. Each of those buildings is around about 200 feet, give or take. All right, and Jeff Bezos' rocket is 300 feet plus.
My goodness.
The next time that you're looking at one of those buildings, just think, well, what if there was another half on top of that again? That's how big Jeff Bezos' rocket is. It sounds like I'm on Pornhub, the way I'm describing that. But anyways, they had a couple of problems trying to get it up earlier. Stop me, please. Get to launch earlier in the week, but eventually got there on Thursday, early in the morning, I think it was. And it's most unusual because normally, when you are sending a rocket into orbit for the first time and it's a new design, what normally happens is it blows up, or all the fuel falls out and it crashes back to Earth, or something goes wrong and they lose contact. To actually take a rocket on a first launch and get it into orbit is a hell of a feat. So bravo to Jeff Bezos. Also, I like the name for the rocket, the New Glenn. I kind of do and I don't like it. I wish they just called it the Glen or something like that. New Glen sounds a bit, like a housing estate.
Well, the old Glen just wasn't up to snuff. Things have moved on.
It sounds like a housing estate, the New Glen. But
New Glen.
That's what they decided to call it, after John Glenn, who, of course, was the first American to go into orbit and also the oldest American in space. And he wrote a letter to Jeff Bezos about 2 years ago, just before he died. And in the letter, he said to Jeff, he said, "I wish you the best of luck with this rocket and with your thing." He says, "and I believe that if it works, in years to come, we will see people boarding spacecraft like we do aircraft today."
Wow.
Arthur C. Clarke was a great predictor of things that were going to happen in the future. And we have stuff about him from the mid-60s talking about one day a man will have a computer and it won't matter where he lives, he'll always be connected. He'll be able to do his work and finance and read the paper and whatever. And that was in the mid-60s. Just those words from John Glenn saying, "You know what, Jeff, one day people will board spacecraft like aircraft." Sounds like one of those mad things that's going to happen in the future. But actually, it might only be 50 years away.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, for a certain class of people.
No, maybe not.
It might only be 50.
Maybe not for a certain class of people. Maybe there will be joyrides to do an orbit. And maybe it's going to cost you whatever, say the equivalent of 10 grand or a first class air ticket or whatever it happens to be. But it would be affordable to an awful lot of people. Not everybody, but an awful lot of people. If they were doing 10 grand trips up into orbit, they would sell them out for years. Absolutely.
Would you do it?
Absolutely. I wouldn't even think twice about it. There you go. Boom. Done. 10 grand, I'm in. 20 grand, I'm in. I don't have 50.
That's your ceiling.
So we found a limit. So anyway, that's space news that is making the news. Now, of course, the other thing is this weekend on Sunday, TikTok is going to be bowing out of the market in the United States of America. The ban has happened.
Well, yes, TikTok lost their last appeal. They went to the Supreme Court and they said, no, that's it. You've got to either, ByteDance, the Chinese parent company, has either got to sell the US arm of its operation or it's going to be banned. It's not that it's going to be inaccessible. It's just that you won't be able to get it through any of the app stores
Yeah.
or anything like that. That's
And
what the ban
actually,
is. It's not.
do you know
It's
what? Of key importance is not only will you not be able to get it through Google or Apple platforms, but you won't be able to get updates. So it's eventually just going to degrade through age, if you want to put it that way.
yeah, it's going to age out. So at time of that we're chatting, uh, the idea that we can that TikTok can still find an American sugar daddy from somewhere is still very much alive. There's an American billionaire called Frank McCourt who was linked to a purchase. Um, uh, I don't know where that stands at the moment. There was a story floating around that Elon Musk is the preferred bidder if he was to make one for a TikTok. TikTok came back and said that's pure fiction. Whoever told you that was having a laugh. And yet, I mean, if there's somebody that could afford it, I mean, it's him. I mean, if he wanted to turn TikTok into a right-wing hellscape, fair enough. He's got the money.
I suppose.
So that's the thing. This time next week, TikTok might be in a lot of trouble in the States. Well, I mean, it's a lot of trouble anyway, but I mean, it might be officially gone.
So in the meantime, what's going to become the new TikTok? And there's a whole load of these kind of apps that are shooting up into the charts on the various Play stores and app stores. But the one that seems to be leading the races, if you like, is called Shu, which is Chinese for Red Note or Little Red Book.
Oh, okay.
So they've translated the name of the app into Red Note. Now it's still mainly in Chinese, but there is a setting in there. The funny thing, there is a setting in there where you could change the language of the app into English. But the problem is 3 levels down, and all of those levels are in Chinese. So the way you need to do it is you need to literally get on YouTube, and there's dozens of these videos that shows you exactly which one to press, and then eventually get into select English as the operating language. So more and more, and then of course the other thing to remember is this only affects people in the United States of America. It doesn't affect us here in Ireland.
Yeah.
TikTok goes on.
We're grand. We are perfectly happy with the possibility of the Chinese government checking us out.
And we still get lots of the Irish content that people here are uploading. So there's no problem with this. But
so this Red Note, is this one of these apps that we're not familiar with but have actually been knocking around for years?
Yeah, it's been rocking around for over 10 years actually. And it started off as, I think it was a Hong Kong shopping app. Or something like that, and it's developed since then. And when I say it's developed since then, it's not new. It's been out for over 10 years, but it's got a huge amount of users in China. It's got like 300 million users in China, so it is a massive app already. But because TikTok and its demise and stuff like that, all of a sudden it's getting a huge influx of users, not only in the United States of America, but I was having a look at the Google Play Store on my own phone, and that is the top download at the moment. Red Note. It seems to me like everybody's jumping on it. And it's quite funny because you get lots of people who've been on it for quite a while, and they're saying, hello to all the new people coming to Red Note, you TikTok refugees.
A safe space for TikTokers.
That's what they're calling it, But also while I was on looking at Google Play Store, I noticed that 2 other big Chinese apps are in there, Temu and Shein, both of the shopping apps. I've never used them. I haven't bought anything.
Yeah, Shine. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, these are both the Wish of the latter half of the 20s, don't you think? I think Wish kind of ran its course. People sort of assume that what you order from it will probably bear a passing resemblance to what you actually ordered.
Be utter rubbish. Anyway, if you want to have a play around with something new this weekend, Red Note is the one to try on your phone and see the new TikTok, allegedly. Now, going straight into our next story, which is going to be like the number one headline all next week, all right, is Trump and the inauguration, all that kind of stuff. And top of the list, well, I won't say top of the list, but near the top of the list of who's going to attend Trump's inauguration is TikTok CEO Xu Chu.
Yeah. The man who's been in front of Congress in the States going, we're totes not surveilling you people. Just because we're a Chinese company doesn't mean we're all like that. Does not mean at all that we might have people that are influenced by the Chinese government.
All right, listen.
Asking politely to see
All right,
what we're doing.
Before you get off that jukebox or as a soapbox and tell me who else is going to Trump's inauguration from the tech world.
From the tech world specifically. Okay. We've got Google's Sundar Pichai. We have Apple's Tim Cook. We have your friend that we've just been talking about, Jeff Bezos. Of course, we have Elon Musk, who we would be surprised if he wasn't in the front row or if he wasn't indeed beside him with one hand in the air, ready to take the oath. And Mark Zuckerberg, who is having a very interesting
Do you want
week.
to put money on that? Do you want to put money on it that Elon Musk will be on the stand within spitting distance of Trump as he takes the oath?
No. But it would be surprising to see how close he's sitting to Trump in relation to Melania.
Will it be Melania or Elonia? Who's going to hold it? Maybe he'll stand there holding both their hands.
Conspicuous by their absence, though, will be Microsoft's Satya Nadella and Sam Altman from OpenAI. Now, of course, Microsoft has invested billions in OpenAI. So the idea that Sam Altman would appear and Satya Nadella not would be bad optics, but also very bad business. So if one doesn't go, it's understandable why the other doesn't. What's interesting, though, is that after the election, all of the companies whose employees would predominantly lean left and secular, have all donated token amounts by their standards, but about $1 million each to the transition. I mean, come on. So they have all been bending the knee to Trump.
It's going to be very interesting over the next couple of weeks, maybe even days, how it's all going to go, because they're saying that Trump and Joe Biden was in the news saying that basically America is about to enter a period of oligarchy. And what oligarchy means is that all of the power in a particular government is held by one person or a very small group of people, and they use that power really for their own benefit. And one of the most famous oligarchies of all time was Sparta. Now, I don't know if you did Greek history or whatever, but Sparta was not a pleasant place to be. Anyway,
very tough people.
Yeah, they take all the newborn babies or whatever and put them out into the countryside for a night. And if they survive, well, then they're worthy of living here. Now, you think that's ridiculous. Or they used to do that, didn't they, with the kids when they were teenagers or something like that? They would put them out into the country. It was a tough society, okay? And you kind of think that would never happen today. However, all right, Mark Zuckerberg is going to be there from Facebook, one of the richest men in the world. He is also in the news this week because he announced a job cuts across Facebook and Meta of 5%. And as he was announcing the job cuts, what was he wearing, Niall?
Yeah, he's wearing a $900,000 watch.
He should have been called Richard, or the shortened version of that.
Well,
do you see what I mean? Where, kind of they're talking about oligarchy. We know it's going to happen. All right. And it's Trump. It's Musk, it's Zuckerberg. I don't know if Jeff Bezos is going to be in there, if Tim Cook is going to be in there, but these are all seriously rich people, and they're all, as you say, bending the knee.
That's what attracts Trump to them.
So. But the Mark Zuckerberg thing is even. I would want to find out more about this story from you, all right? Because he's announcing those job cuts, all right, wearing $1 million watch. He's also said that the company needs something. And when I read this, I went, you are kidding me. What is it that Zuckerberg said the company needs more of?
Yeah, well, Zuckerberg went on the Joe Rogan podcast and said that what the company needs is more masculine energy. An interesting statement. I don't know sort of necessarily where it came from, but other than the fact that Trump made inroads into the male vote, across all demographics in the States. did very well. So clearly sees a growth opportunity in becoming the social network of choice for men. That's certainly the way I see it. Internally, they're going a little bit Spartan, as you say. They're looking to cut 5% of their global workforce. So not sure how it's actually going to shake down in Ireland, but we're not immune to it.
And where did they say they're going to start? These 5% will be made up of what?
Yeah, it will basically be the 5% of the entire operation that are performing the poorest. Now, here's the thing. If you have, this is decided along the famous bell curve, where, most people sit in the middle, and there's some people that are awful and there's some people that are brilliant. And it's on the assumption that the highest peak of the bell curve is dead average, right? So you've got people that will get by, you've got people that are reasonably good, and then you've got the high performers, right? It's what's called a normal distribution. And what Zuckerberg wants to do is chop off sort of the bit at the far left, right? Just sort of
Get rid of the low hanging fruit.
Let's get rid of few people. Yeah, and let's bring in new people, new energy. We'll get our teams performing better. We'll have, more people that actually want to be there and are passionate about our products. That's the reasoning behind it. And it's a very it's not a new practice. I mean, Microsoft used to do it for years. It's called stack ranking, and it was big under Steve Ballmer's tenure, and they eventually ditched it. And the reason it was done away with is because it created a very toxic culture where you had people looking over their shoulders, wondering how secure their job was. So it led to a lot of gatekeeping, a lot of siloing of information, a lot of, well, you can't get rid of me because if I go, I've got the code base for X, or I know where the bodies are buried, all this kind of thing. And also, if you look at an entire team might be performing really, really well in easy conditions, and you might have an entire team performing really, really badly, but under terrible conditions. So what do? Do you end up axing the really, really good team that is actually performing badly, having been given a very difficult problem? So you're not necessarily, it removes the entire idea of context, and just assumes that talent is all, right? It has nothing to do with how hard your work is, whether you're the smartest person doing the hardest job. If the job turns out to be, beyond the skills of one human being, it actually makes you look like you can't do the job, right? So there's plenty of things wrong with this system. All it does is create a toxic environment for various reasons. But hey, masculine energy. Let's get bro power going.
So we're getting into that, and then the other thing that happened with Meta is the EC came out with their preliminary report to say that. Do you remember when we were given that choice? You log into Facebook one day and it goes, "Oh yeah, by the way, you can continue to use the service free if you agree to allow us to use your data, or you can pay for privacy. Which you want to do?" Because you can't get in until you tell us.
Yeah, that's Facebook's argument. And oddly enough, that was the Irish government's. That was the Data Protection Commission's argument for a long time. Because you remember the DPC went to bat for Facebook over user information and the amount it can collect and for how long and all that kind of thing. When there was a GDPR case went up against Facebook, they said, look, hey, we can collect all this stuff because you're using our service for free. You are paying for the service you're using for free with your data. Now, the other option is that you can actually pay to use our service and we won't retain anything about you, which is why they introduced the subscription fee. So that's where we are. Facebook had pay or consent is the model. The EU struck it down, said no, it's not in line with what we do in Europe. And the more we hear of this, the better over the coming 5 years. Under the digital markets, I think it's under the Digital Services Act as well.
You sound like you're in favor of Facebook and you think that it's a fair option.
Well, look, if you know the deal you're getting into, that's one thing. If you sign up for a service and you're told there's a free tier and a premium tier, but you know that at the start, that's fine. That's an informed choice that you can make. What happened with Facebook was that they buried their choice in the fine print and there was no other option. It was basically, you want to use our service, we'll take this. There was no, premium, there was no subscription, it was just assumed. And that works in the States. No problem over there, but we know that they have a very different attitude towards personal data in the States. Again, if you want to play in Europe, you got to abide by our rules. And thankfully, our market is big enough that the likes of Facebook actually have to do so.
I understand the whole thing about if you want to use the service for free, well, then you are the thing that you give up your data. Okay. It's a reasonable thing to say if you're willing to accept it, or you can pay for the privacy. The thing that really got my back up about this, and why I'm delighted that you were chasing it, is because even though you knew it was kind of coming, you got to Facebook one day and it said, "Okay, here it is, decision time, free. Give us your data or pay for privacy. Decide now." There was no, you have 30 days to decide or anything like that. And this was a major change from how the service was set up in the first place. And it was exactly how a bully would behave. Do you know what I mean? And that's what really kind of just annoyed me about it. And I decided, you know what? No, I'm not going to use it for free. And you can't have my data and you can't have my money either. All right? So it just really bugged the hell out of me, to be honest. Anyway.
It got your goat.
Anyways, the EC just came out with a preliminary report. It said that what they did does not comply with the DMA Digital Market Act, as you correctly said there, Niall. If that report is confirmed and rubber stamped and all that kind of stuff, the European Community can then impose a fine of up to 10% of Meta turnover. I wonder if they will.
And you know what? They can afford it. Keep those fines coming.
And I want to hear your opinion on a third story with Meta, also not a good one, all right, in the last couple of weeks, where they said they're going to not do any fact-checking anymore. They've ditched the entire team and they're going with this whole community notes model. What do you think?
Now, thankfully, this is something that is A, not happening in Europe, and B, if you use a third-party service, it's unaffected. Right. So say if you've got a social media verification company like Storyful, right? Their access to Facebook isn't going to be restricted. It's just Facebook's internal team for fact checking is being disbanded. Right. So if they still have to do fact checking in Europe, probably all around the world, it's just in the US, their team that handles that has been disbanded. And, again, sucking up to the new boss, we are guardians of free speech in Facebook, and we will let the users decide whether something is correct or not. Of course, this relies on the good faith of people who use the platform. And sometimes, we've seen community notes in X actually being reasonably effective and accurate. Would you entrust the community to actually do something that is commercially very, very sensitive? Not sure I would, but hey, I mean, it's not Wikipedia.
Well, listen, as I say, next week when Trump gets into power, I think things are going to change, and I don't think it's going to be in the best way possible. I don't think it's going to be a disaster or anything like that, but I just don't think it's I think we're going to be taking steps backwards rather than steps forward. And good luck to Harris and Martin as well, and our new government as well with their programme for government. A couple of good ideas in there tech-wise as well. Listen, that's it for the news this week. Niall, thanks for keeping us up to date.
From TechCentral.ie, this is the award-nominated Tech Radio from TechCentral.ie.
AI is only as good as the data that it's trained on, and for some organizations, that can mean bringing in a lot of information from a lot of different departments. But does AI have to know everything about what you do in order to be useful? Ivor Buckley is Dell Technologies Ireland Field CTO, and he had a chat with Niall Kitson about what data management will look like this year, 2025, and why your AI doesn't have to be a know-it-all.
Ivor, when we're looking at the challenges organizations are having when it comes to AI, we're constantly hearing that AI is only as good as the data that it has to work with. So what can organizations do to create cultures where, either the processes are in place or that awareness is there that not just data, but data hygiene is not only a thing, but has to be monitored and updated and reappraised regularly?
Yeah, I suppose over the last 12 or 18 months, I think we were in a hype cycle in 2023. And when it came to the start of 2024 and organizations started looking at productionizing AI, so they were getting out of the use cases and the pilots phases, which were all obviously in sandboxes or up in the public cloud. And it was all kind of neat and consolidated, and it wasn't impacting, customer data or maybe patient data in healthcare. When we came to the start of the year and people started thinking about how am I going to productionize this now, it very quickly became a problem, and especially from the data aspect. So, AI to me is a tool, and we were very quick, I think, last year to look at trying to find use cases for AI rather than, what is the business challenge we're trying to solve? And is AI the right tool to solve that with? Because there could be other ways of doing it, and that is fine. But maybe AI can bring an advantage here. And if it does, then AI is heavily dependent on a good quality data set. And without a good quality data set, you don't get that trusted output that you get from, that you need to get out of AI. And if you don't get a trusted output, then you will lose the people you're trying to connect with. So if it's a business and they're trying to connect with their customer, financial services organization, and, I go onto a financial website, I'm talking to a digital agent or digital human, and the information I'm getting back, I question or I'm not happy with or whatever, if I'm not getting that trusted output back, then, that leads to a mistrust in the technology and a mistrust in in the information we're getting. So it's getting good quality data back, getting the right, we talk about the 4 hours in Dell, getting the right data to the right people at the right time and at the right cost. Because I think the problem of data has kind of been misunderstood a little bit. We're going on for the last 20, 30 years trying to solve a data problem. That hasn't been a new thing. AI, analytics, that's been around forever. The data management, the data silo problems have been around forever. So, we believe there's been, over the last number of decades, there's been this thing about getting the single source of truth and there's been an awful lot of, movement of data when it comes to trying to get data to the right place and get insight using the business information tools. And we feel that the way forward is with a single point of access as opposed to a single source of truth. And what I mean by that is leaving the data where it is in situ, in the siloed locations, but using connectors to access it to give it that single view in. So we're looking at a single access view as opposed to, we spent the last, 10, 15 years going from data warehouses to data lakes and data lakes to the public cloud. And, all that has meant is that we've been moving the data around the place, but not actually fixing the problem, which is trying to get insight of the data as quickly as possible.
Yeah. So you might have different standards for different types of data. You might have different formats. You might have different, whether it's, structured data or something that's reliant on loose text or observations or something like that. So that idea of separating things out to where they have the more natural home, as opposed to throwing them into one central location and hoping everything will sort of live together happily.
That's it. Different formats in the data, and that getting that consolidated, that mass consolidation that can be a costly exercise, especially when you go to the clouds. Scaling in the cloud at that level with the volumes of data we're dealing with today can be a very costly thing. And I find that we're getting into this infinite loop of how do we get out of the silos? Well, hey, here's the latest technology. Let's go to that. We get to that latest technology and, we're back in a silo again. And there's this infinite loop of being in a silo. We moved, as I say, from warehouses to data lakes to the cloud. And I don't think we've solved the actual nub of the problem here, which is what we actually want to do is spend the most of our time trying to get the inside out of the data, whereas a lot of the data engineers have spent a lot of their time trying to get access to good quality data. So 70% of data engineers' time is spent just trying to get the data to a certain place so that they can actually extract information out of it. And when businesses come up with challenges, we see that like about 80% of the time is spent trying to, harness the data, cleanse the data, and all that whole piece around getting the data, good quality data set. And only 20% is actually spent then actually, getting to the point where you get the insight and the value you get out of the data.
And it does create the picture that the previous paradigm was just all about pouring everything into a bucket, into a lake, into just a central processor. Whereas we seem to be moving to an understanding that these things are dynamic. They've all got different rules. You should be able to plug into each one and see that they're updating and they're changing, as opposed to just assuming everything is static in, as I said, that single bucket.
Yeah. And, I suppose what we want to get to is a point where, if you write a query using like a BI integration tool like Tableau or Power BI or something like that it can hit its query off a Hadoop or a Snowflake or whatever your flavor of engine is. And it'll probably be more than one of those. Because we're in I always say we're in a multiple clouds world rather than a multi-cloud world. To me, we've got the public cloud, and a lot of my customers are in multiple public clouds, not just one. They probably have data that sits on premise in a private cloud. A lot of my organizations that deal with have edge, be it manufacturing, be it healthcare, the hospitals, manufacturing plants, if it's manufacturing, branch, or if it's financial services. So, we're dealing with disparate silos of data across a wide ecosystem in a multi-cloud ecosystem. And, we need to be able to, when we send a query, we need to have tooling that can actually, and an architecture that can, hit all those silos of data to bring back a result to the end user that they don't care, where it all is, and they don't have to go moving all that data around the place. But they get back the answer they need, and that's happening, I suppose, abstracted to them in the background.
So let's have a look at that issue of access. Because if we have specific people dealing with specific problems, does that turn into, okay, your data scientist gets access to everything? Or do you get to be a bit more pragmatic and say, well, do you know what? He actually doesn't need to know about accounts when he needs to know about, our supply chain or something like that. Are we getting more pragmatic when it comes to access like that?
I think we are. I think we'll have to be. Look, I think at the center of all this, and the other thing that's come up, I suppose, over the last 12 months, apart from the quality of the data that you need to obviously feed an AI system, is the data governance. And, I remember, when I worked in IT originally about 20 years ago, security used to be, the inhibitor of innovation. And now the data governance piece has been kind of taught in the same way. But I'm encouraged to see in the industry that rather than like security was kind of a peripheral thing, it was an afterthought. Data governance is being seen as the front and center here. And I think having those guardrails in place is what helps you with the access that different organizations or different departments within organizations getting access to the data. But there is more of a pragmatism towards it. I think we have to be careful when it comes to GDPR and all that whole thing about how we share data, especially when it comes to the likes of healthcare and patient data, or when it comes to financial services, they're heavily regulated when it comes to this kind of thing, right? But I suppose it'd be a nice place to be, and I think the technology is there. I think the policymakers have to come along this journey with us as well. But it would be a nice place to be if you could get to a scenario where we're analyzing data to maybe that could help, maybe we'll say cancer care patients. If there's certain markers within the data that could tell us, and accelerate the time to getting a person to treatment. These are kind of things that would be of huge benefit. But that would mean sharing data maybe across organizations, across hospitals, across healthcare. And that obviously does lead to, I suppose, GDPR type scenarios. So we have to be careful in how we do this. But there's a lot of positives that could be gleaned from being able to share data in that way to try and accelerate, healthcare, cure for diseases and that kind of thing, and really meaningful, positive impact to society.
That's an interesting point about applications and working across organizations where there's almost, you're taking it on faith that, other places are treating their data with the same sorts of sensitivity that you might be yourself. This is a conversation that I imagine is going to be happening across organizations, perhaps at the project ideation stage, where you sit down and say, okay, well, we want to do A, B, and C. By the way, does your organization do this? Because if they don't, we're going to have a problem.
Yeah, that's quite right. And that's back to the start point of when you come to an AI project. And last year we had, we accelerated into use cases very quickly, and having a defined AI strategy with a proper data policy, with data governance front and center, is very important when it comes to starting your journey on AI. I think we've learned a lot. I think, look, it's last year there was a lot of excitement and hype around the whole thing, and people got kind of straight into it. But I think there's definitely been a more pragmatic approach taken this year to it. And I think people see the value and have seen, piloting use cases to see the value can bring. But it all comes back to the data and, the sharing of the data. We have the EU AI Act now, right? That's going to give us the guardrails, and it's encouraging to see the government has, across a number of departments, Minister Derek O'Leary has put in place that 9 of the departments are going to start looking at how they can use the EU AI Act to help them get those guardrails and that policy in place. Because without that policy in place at the start, I think we're setting ourselves up for a mistrusted and unethical and maybe possibly an irresponsible AI output, right? So it's very important that we get to a point where what the end user is receiving, or who we're trying to connect to is receiving, is trusted, ethical and responsible AI at the end of the day.
And of course, it comes down to what the nature of the AI we'll be dealing with is, whether it's something that solves a problem or something that solves part of a problem and is part of a network of AI agents. And that's kind of the theme in 2025 is going to be agented AI, which is sort of the example of the chatbot that doesn't act like a chatbot, I suppose. It's the AI that, while it does very simple things, comes across as progressively more convincingly human. This is something Dell has been working on as well.
Yeah, we have. Yeah, it's been probably the biggest use case, and I'm not sure if it's the simplest one to go after, but it's definitely something that has definitely stoked some ideation, to use your term earlier, in our customers. I suppose the idea of being able to connect with your customer, right, for an organization is a huge thing. A lot of organizations feel, well, they have all this data from their customers, they're disconnected, or they're not able to connect in the proper way. And I think we've all been in scenarios where we've got, when I go up and I get onto a chatbot, I answer the questions in the chatbot to get me to a human in the quickest possible manner. I'm not exactly engaging with the chatbot. It's been shown that using a digital human can be 4 to 5 times more interactive for a user than a chatbot. And I can understand why, because you're seeing, it is a digital human, but you're seeing an image, an avatar, and it is talking back and responding back to you and showing you that emotive part as well. So there's a huge emotive thing that's developing. And we need to remember, when we look at these digital humans at the moment, these are probably the worst versions of these digital humans we'll see. So they're going to evolve and be more human-like as we progress. So I suppose the idea with the digital human is, and the reasons that people are seeing the advantage of this is that kind of 24/7 connectivity that, as humans, we work maybe, a customer service might be 9 to 5. They could do that for 24/7. They can do it in different languages. So these, they can speak whatever language you want them to speak. So that lends itself quite well to the whole ability for somebody in a multicultural country to be able to speak to a service in your own language. That can help, obviously, with the service that you're getting. There's also the different profiles you could use for the digital human. So you could have, your 20-something single kind of version, kind of hip, I suppose, version of it. You could have something like, for myself, a middle-aged, starting to grey hair, family type digital human. And then you could have something for the elderly generation as well, so that they're talking to somebody, I suppose, that they feel that they're connecting with somebody that's of, it's an aesthetic thing, but it can be an important thing when you're trying to connect with somebody, that you're talking to a digital human of your own era, I suppose, and that the digital human is more of your age. And that's been something, I suppose, that when they're not looking at single digital humans, the organizations are looking at multiple digital humans, and depending on their customer base, they will have a digital human for different generations across that customer base. So it's been quite an interesting topic. There's organizations looking at, if they were redesigning their websites, was one that we saw, that would they bother actually doing the website? Would you just go straight on to a digital agent and all that information is plugged in behind the digital agent? We all struggle on websites if we're up on financial services or a bank or whatever, how do I get information about a mortgage? And, it might be the first time for somebody doing that and learning about that. It might be a better thing to be able to, rather than struggling around a website or, being taken to a chatbot, to be taken to a digital human who can interact directly with you to give you the information you need. And eventually, I think we're not quite there yet, but that would take you through a full process end to end. So we've talked to organizations around, in the mobile industry. If you're upgrading your mobile, that you go through the whole process using a digital human to help you through that. Forms are filled out, everything is signed, digitally signed, and the whole process is completed using that. So it can be a different way to interact, but it's been shown to be a more that customers are more connected to a digital human than they are to a chatbot or to other methods. So it's definitely something that's taking off, and we've seen it as well in healthcare. There's been some use cases already rolled out where that check-in, check-out process in a hospital, when you come in, that whole process could happen using a digital agent, or that you're sent home with, a clean plan from a digital human to accelerate your, when you're leaving a hospital and you're going home. That can be, sometimes you're waiting for the consultant to come around or whatever. That process could be accelerated using a digital human. So there's a ton of really good use cases for the digital agents. Yeah.
And that was Niall Kitson chatting with Ivor Buckley, Dell Technologies Ireland Field CTO.
This is Tech Radio with Dusty Rhodes and Niall Kitson.
That's it for our show this week. Of course, we have tons more stories online that we weren't able to squeeze into the podcast, including...
We have Aerogen's official 10-year plan. We have Dr. Lydia Komisky from Marai talking about disaster risk management, and a University of Galway spin-outs work with the European Space Agency.
You'll find all those and more online at techcentral.ie. We're back again next Friday with a brand new show online and on RTE Radio 1 Extra. And do remember, please share our podcast with a friend. Just tell them, if they're into tech, to look up Tech Radio Ireland on Apple, Spotify, or now on YouTube as well. Until next time, from myself, Dusty Rhodes, and from Niall Kitson, as always, take care. Have a great weekend.
Remember, you can get the latest Irish tech news with hourly updates, daily newsletters, and more at our website, techcentral.ie. Share the knowledge and invite a friend to listen. Search Apple, Spotify, or YouTube for Tech Radio Ireland, or listen with RTE Radio 1 Extra. Tech Radio is produced by dustpod.io for techcentral.ie. From me, Artemis, live long and prosper.